Okay. Hi. So my name's Danielle Giroux, and I'm here going to be presenting a general overview that I hope will be helpful in your endeavors when it comes to distribution, focusing primarily on VR, but immersive in general. And so let's begin. So, firstly, just a little bit about myself. It's been about 4 years that I've been working in this industry. And so my bio says art business professional at the intersection of storytelling and technology. So my background is more on the art side of things, contemporary art, photography, and it's been 4 years that I've been with first Atlas V and then Estrella. So these are a few of the different events, industry events, and festivals that I've had the opportunity to participate in and participate in panels or roundtables, all around this subject of diffusion, dissemination, distribution, whatever word you want to use when it comes to connecting audiences with immersive content. So that's my background. As I said, Atlas V and Estrella are the main studios that we've been working with, and the idea is again how to bring virtual reality to and immersive experiences to audiences. So these are just some mid-journey images when we start to think about the potentials of what VR can mean, and immersive projection and planetarium experiences can mean for audiences, whether that's online or at home. So there's a lot of wonder, there's a lot of opportunity here, and a lot of impact. So this is where I will talk about throughout my time with you today, just what VR can do when it comes to reaching audiences. So in my past at Estrella and with Atlas V, which are I can go back actually, maybe, sorry. Um, so Estrella and Atlas V, cut that part out. Atlas V is a studio that's dedicated to the production of immersive stories. So they're behind some of amazing VR works, interactive, six stuff, and 360 that have made their way around the world when it comes to distribution. These works include projects like Gloomy Eyes and Spheres, Notes on Blindness. Very recently, we've been working on Wallace and Gromit, which will release, on the MetaQuest store. And in our time at Estrella, I joined before the founding of Estrella and then helped bring that to life under the founder, Antoine Carroll. And that project and branch of Atlas is dedicated to distribution. So that's also why I've been going to all these different events. And the focus of Estrella is really on the publishing side. So in this presentation, I will talk about that as an option. But again, when we go to this mid-journey imaging, Atlas has really been on the full spectrum of when it comes to what's possible with VR and storytelling works that can go online for users at home that have a VR headset, or works that are made for in-person. And this connecting factor that makes it important when it comes to science and media and art is that impact side. So that was where this slide comes in when we're talking about a research that at the end of the slides, and maybe in the description, there'll be a link to some resources. This is a project, On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World, that's by a large team, Atlas V and Archer's Mark. So it's directed by four amazing visionaries, Arnaud Collinard, Pierre Zandrovich, Steve and Mike from Archer's Mark. It's a really stellar work. This is the same team that made the documentary piece Notes on Blindness. All are available on the Oculus Quest store. So if you're getting into this medium, a big thing I'll repeat throughout this presentation is to research as much as possible, read, find out what's been done. So these works could be great inspiration. And it was a collaboration with Games for Change and Estrella through the distribution side. to find a way to distribute and think about impact. Games for Change is an entity that is U.S. based, that is looking at how games and immersive, they have XR for Change, so games and immersive media can have an impact in various ways. So On the Morning You Wake was a case study for them, and a great reference point and a good launching point for what I want to talk about today, because it really shows that there's a lot of impact when it comes to this medium, and as we'll see, it's really, there's a lot that needs to be done on the conception of a work so that it can be distributed and have that impact. So that's the basis from which we start this presentation, and I recommend looking into this research further. That can be a helpful tool in guiding your endeavors for creating. But the thing is, what we're doing in general isn't reinventing the wheel. So throughout history, there's been different modes of immersive work and immersive storytelling. So these are some images of the earliest planetariums, which, if you're coming from the science world, you might be familiar with the mechanisms and the systems and the history around this format. And so there are some alignments with this and with the new technology that's being made, and the questions of how to distribute and how to get it out there to the public are all intertwined with the medium and its conception. So whether that's, when we think about, for example, some of these more recent ancestors of the contemporary virtual reality headset, like the Sensorama, and we look at the kind of down pitfalls of why this didn't take on and have a life of its own, and we all have a Sensorama in our home, we can kind of better understand what we need to do today so that these works that we're creating can be seen by a lot of people. So the Sensorama is, as you said, we had some ancestors of what VR is. This piece is really quite funny because it's inspired by Huxley's Brave New World. And we see that a lot with different things being made today. There's some lineage to science fiction of the past. But the thing is, it was very heavy, very clunky. The content could only be made by the creator, so it was very limited in terms of what was possible. Also, culturally, there was a lot going on in the 60s, culture wars, that it didn't make sense for the market. There was a lot of things that were missing, and oddly enough, there are some of those things that exist today as well when we come to these complications with the technology, or this very decentralized way of production that sometimes doesn't match always the market. So there's things to look at when it comes to the past and how we're doing today. There's also a lot of differences when it comes to today, but we're not exactly here yet. Again, these are some mid-journey images of imagining VR in a science context, where we can imagine kids and adults getting inspired and learning through virtual mediums. But there's still a certain few steps that need to happen before we get to this idealized future of what VR is, or immersive content. But let's take a step back now that we have that general introduction that maybe you've already heard about or not, but is a good launching point for this discussion or this presentation. What constitutes XR? Well, we can say VR, AR, MR, and then there's another side of things, which is collective immersion, which can include these different formats as well. So I'm sure you're familiar with these already if you're getting into the production side, but in the VR side of things, there's 360 video and SIG stuff, which are really important to think about when it comes to how your work is distributed. On the AR side, there's many different things, but I'm simplifying to mobile filters and AR glasses, which can be we'll talk about technology soon, but there was the Google Glass that didn't really kick off, but there are also the Magic Leap and HoloLens. And then when it comes to mixed reality, we have new headsets that have come onto the market, such as the Apple Vision Pro, which is not yet available for consumers. But there's also the Quest 3, which is coming out very soon, which has pass through, meaning you can be in the virtual but also see the real in color. And then there's projection and set design, which can just mix. If you're mixing a VR with some sort of other element, it can be called mixed reality. So these words and a lot of the vocabulary in the world that we are in when it comes to the immersive industry are shifting slightly, and depending on hardware and depending on sometimes regions, and so it's good to try to stay up to date with the different umbrella terms that encompass what we do. So obviously, I think 3DEF, 6DEF. There's a lot of people that don't know what this is. The differences are. And there's a lot of us that can see really clearly that, oh yes, these are very separate. But it's important to think about when you're conceptualizing your work, because it will have a massive impact later down the line of where a project can go. So a 360 piece, an example of two different works that are within the realm of science content, would be Spheres and The Cave. So Spheres is both of these are in the Australia catalog, so that's why I selected them, because I'm quite close with them. And they're made by two different teams. So Spheres is an Atlas V production. It's City Lights and Nova Lab. You can see on the bottom all the different partners that are involved. And it's a 3-part interactive 6DEF experience. So 6DEF can be interactive or passive, where you're sitting back, but the thing is you can move through the world, and that's what that little visual shows over here. But generally, this is coming in either an APK or an XA format. And APK would mean that it's standalone, mobile, not needing to be connected to a computer, whereas PCVR, it requires a computer. But it generally has a higher fidelity and a higher visual quality when it's connected to a computer, because it can run from that modem, versus when it's a standalone headset where everything is in the headset. So that means it's more similar to a cell phone. And then 360 is definitely still relevant today in when it comes to distribution. It's not to be dismissed in terms of format, but it's not interactive. It's a video that happens around you. You cannot move through it. It's an MP4 file, and it's the most lo-fi, but as I said, it can still be super impactful, because there's a lot of people out there that haven't really had too much exposure to VR. And if you're working in science and trying to reach more spheres based on education or in museums, this format can be really, really great for streamlining the process. There's a lot of different formats, though, when it comes to immersive. And there's a lot of different areas that they go and kind of springboard into the public sphere. So we're talking about VR a lot. Adjacent to and in parallel with what we've done at Australia and what other studios are doing, are these more collective immersive experiences. So this is just a little GIF of the project, the experience What is Left of Reality by Pierre Zandovich and Ferdinand Devreux, which are two the excellent visionaries from Atlas team. Ferdinand is the creative technical director, and Pierre is the art director and has done a lot of artistic work the past years. And so they made this independently with the Doc Lab as a supporter. And it's a projection with Connect. So you go through this, there's a storytelling element, point cloud, you become part of the experience. So there's a lot of really exciting things when it comes to what can be done with the technology. And all of that will inform how it can then go live and meet audiences. recently with Atlas, what we've also done with a collection of their content was porting the VR experiences to projection mapping spaces. So you rooms like uh, there's a lot in every city, it seems, is having a different warehouse or space pop up that has projection that is on these different walls, whether that's London and Lighthouse with the David Hockney experience. There's the Atelier de Lumière in Paris that has been doing this for years. There's Oasis Immersion in Montreal, which is the partner that we worked with on 3 VR pieces that we brought into projection mapping. It was challenging, but it's possible. But if you think about where the type of content and how you're making it from the beginning, you can kind of plan for these later down the line. We talked about mixed reality. I mentioned that when there can be projection and VR together. This is a piece by Ben Joseph Andrews and Emma Roberts that is really something that is made modular to be shown in various spaces. So this is a project that they brought to a bunch of different festivals and is all about the Daintree rainforest. These are all hand drawn. It's a durational experience, so it's 24 hours long. You can go in and come out whenever, and it's a PC VR piece, but because it has mixed reality elements, it can be adapted for different spaces to invite larger audiences. So when it comes to format, there's so many different options, but it really depends on what you want to do. So whether you've made a VR piece and then it's so impactful that a museum wants to showcase it within a larger exhibition like Notes on Blindness, or you're making something like Gondwana that's made to be with a museum from its origin, whatever you decide to do, you want to be thinking about where it's going to live, how it's going to exist, and that what it can offer to the public, because then that's going to help it get out there. So that's again another foundation to just think about the different formats, and now I'd love to just get a little bit more nitty gritty and talk about these 2 different sides. There's probably more because this industry is shifting quite rapidly, but these are 2 really important areas to think about. So publishing, this is coming from more the B2C side, where you're making something that will go on a streaming platform like Oculus, Steam, Pico, Viveport, DOVR. There's a few others. There's not hundreds, but there's several VR streaming platforms where someone who has invested in a VR headset can then go and find your piece online and purchase it directly. There are a whole host of things. It sounds super simple. It follows in some ways the video game market, but because it's VR and because the industry is ever evolving, there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes when it comes to that. So I'll have an example later on that we can look at. And then the other side of things are more B2B side. So licensing. So this could be in the whether that's edutainment. So we talked about these different venues, museums. Well, museums, I guess, would be more educational institutions, but if it's YouTube VR, if it's that's still a B2C platform, but sometimes there are different companies out there, startups that are licensing works. So if you're making something and you have the license, then you can work with different institutions to showcase it there. General info on the market, because it's helpful to see and also is good to think about. There's the projections of this industry are quite interesting. So every year there's a new forecast that comes out. So at the end of the year, so soon we'll have the 2023 review forecast for the next year. But there's big companies involved in what we're doing, which always will have a shift on the type of content and the format. So with an introduction like a Apple Vision Pro or even the Quest 3, there are new shifts in the way the market will respond. The Apple is a particular case because it's quite a closed circle at this moment. But something like Meta, HTC, and Pico, all of the SDKs are available online. So it's important, especially if you're going on the publishing side, but even no matter what, to be really looking at those SDKs and making to the standards, the minimum requirements of those different headsets, so that you can make sure that maybe you're doing a project that can both be published and live in a physical space. So that means that you want to have it hit as many marks as possible so that it can go to and have a good lifespan and have an impact. It seems like every few months there's a new type of headset coming out. There's regional headsets as well. In France, we have an amazing AR piece that's a little bit more business side, but for now it's called the Lynx. So there's a lot of different types of materials out there, and what we've seen is that the past few years there was a big increase of headset sales for the consumer at home in 2020, 2021, especially with COVID. Makes sense because we were at home. And then there was a decline when it came to the following year as people started to leave. And there is somewhat of a disconnect when it comes to how to integrate fluidly VR in spaces that aren't already making or accustomed to VR. So there's a lot of work being done on the development, and a lot of different people that are thinking about formats and how to do this. So it's still early, and it's important to see the big picture of this market is in its emerging stages, and it's not always straightforward what we do, and there's no simple answer for how to make something that is easily distributed. But there are some general things we can talk about. As I mentioned, location-based is an interesting area because it is taking up a good amount of the market, but it's not as simple somehow as the at-home entertainment, because this is anything that's LBE is what we say. It's defined as spaces, venues, and institutions that house media that transport participants out of their home to an area where they can enjoy immersive experiences, for this case. And as we can see from this is from Statista, the end of this year, and we're already seeing this with some of the information that's coming out from the market researches. If you look online, making up 11% of the industry, but it is supposed to be increasing as we move forward to the end of this decade. So with that information, that just very basic overview, the recommendation is to really look into the technology and what can be done when you have a finished product. So the main players that we see, if we're boiling this down, are Oculus, which is connected to Meta, Pico, which is connected to ByteDance, and Viveport, or VIVE, which is connected to HTC. So all of these companies have made headsets that have different advantages and limitations. They're seeming to find their own individual niches, but at the same time, they can be adapted and hardwired and hacked to fit different use cases. So it's also a question of what resources you have available, and then what that can be also when it comes to human resources, which developer you're working with that is most familiar with specific SDKs, or maybe they're able to go on different sides, dig into different materials. But all of this will be really important to brainstorm, because it will then impact how you're doing things later on. So we talked about the hardware and market share a little. I want to talk a little bit more because this you can take a screenshot of this, or I suggest looking onto the resources, which could be in the description. But I talked about this: Apple, PlayStation, HTC, Tencent, Apple again, Meta. And if we boil this down, Meta at this moment with Oculus headset is making up about 75% of the market, and they are focusing on at home entertainment, gaming, and the latter. HTC is being more and more known as the headset that is for in person. Their PC VR, tethered headsets have been told by me and by several other people, whether they're running an arcade with VR headsets, that they're the most consistent for LBE. But recently, with the Pico and the influx of 360 content being a format that is super streamlined and has this much less bugs and complications because it's just an MP4 file that can be launched. This headset, we see there's different influx of it being used in schools and auditoriums and different spaces where you can have people watching headsets at the same time. So researching what's been done already, by who, when, and how. This can be considered a market analysis, but it also can just be inspiration for what to do going forward. So I'm going to talk about two different works that are science-based for SILBERSALZ, and that are on that two sides of the spectrum, at home and in person. Meanwhile, they both do tend to mix, if and it's best if you can have things that, if you're making things that are modular, that can go into both spaces. So I'm going to first start with the piece called The Body VR, which is from 2016. It's available for free on Steam. And what's interesting about this piece is, like many works that have been able to be produced to this date, is it's in collaboration with another entity. So Penn State Teaching and Learning with Technology, the Body VR. There's the Body VR LLC. This is a project where you go inside a body, so you're getting to see and interact with in a sick stuff way these different elements inside the body. So if you look into this, like I said, it's published directly for the consumer at home. There's great reviews on the Steam page, and this work has also, if you go and you look online, it's able to be licensed directly from the distributor. So it's something that we can see from an outside view, as someone who has not personally worked on this project, that it's being licensed on the B2B side, and it's available on for the public at home with a VR headset. It's available for free online on the store. So it seems that their revenue model is more coming from the licensing side of things. So this is from 2016, so it's a bit dated, but at the same time, it's a good example of a project that collaborated with an institution, brought it online, so it's obviously meeting minimum requirement standards where it's going to function consistently because it needed to be published. So you have a consistent platform, so you know it works well, and then the reviews also confirm that. And then you also have this other side where it seems other universities that have access to VR headsets are able to license this work. If we compare it with a piece that was really made for in person, this a good work to look into, to explore, which is known in the industry, recognized as one of the most successful location-based works to date is a project called The Infinite, or L'Infini it's a French Canadian work by Felix and Paul. And Felix and Paul have been in the industry. It's a studio, as I said, based in Montreal, that they've been really along with Atlas and other studios that have been here since 2016 and making have really been pushing the boundaries and working with some great partners. So this is the Felix and Paul. They've worked closely with the Centre Phi, or the Phi Center, which is also based in Montreal in a physical space. So you can see if there's going to be a lot more success if you have a venue connection and are making with a partner in mind. So it's really grounded in reality. They also are working with the ISS National Laboratory, which is Center for Advancement of Science and Space. And if we dig even further, we see that NASA's a partner. So they have a lot of different resources and partners that are interested. This work is really fascinating because they've worked with high technology, putting this in outer space, inventing an entirely multi-platform distribution model for the capturing of the material from the space and where it's going. So this is on their website, and they're hitting all of these different marks, whether it comes to VR platforms, the cinematic VR experience, which is generally for them, and this is in a 360 rather than a 6DUF format. It's also available for screens, just as a 2D. There's a mobile version. It's ported for planetariums and domes. And there's a whole system where it can go with installation and set design and wraparound materials for a museum and a science center. And with all of these partners, they've been able to workshop and make an experience. The Infinite is, if you have a chance, it travels. It's been across the US, but it's currently right now in Montreal. So if you're there, or if you look into it, it's a great example of science content that is bridging that divide between science and entertainment, and deeply rooted in the experience economy. So distribution strategy, again, you want to think about this from the beginning. It comes into play when you're thinking about funding. They're going to ask you as well, what's your distribution strategy? So that they're doing that. They're asking that if you're coming from a European mostly, or a country where there's public funding, or even if you're coming from a private funding, a place where funding comes more from private spaces, they're going to want to know how you're getting it out there. And what your plan is, what's your business model, but also how can you help people see the work. Vision and use case, you want to think about that. That's tied deeply into what we were just talking about. And then there's some general tips about marketing and promotion, and these borrow from cinema and video games and events, and you can dig into that more online, but I'm going to give you a general overview. So financing and distribution. This different, what I'll show you, comes from discussions with some people who have been in the industry for a long time. What was happening before COVID? There was a big influx of different financiers that didn't really know so much about the medium, but wanted to see things being made, and it was kind of a little. And it can kind of be looked at now as somewhat an R&D time. So if we look at the past, we can learn a lot about what to do for today. But this is just a list of different funders at the time. Today, as we said, there are still government funds in a lot of different regions, especially in Europe, but not everywhere. Sometimes there are still headsets that are investing in content, but it depends. It's not as it was in pre-COVID times. Brands can sometimes invest, foundations, publishers, and there are some universities that are collaborating. I don't have that on the list, but I think it's a bit case by case if they're fully financing something. I guess if you're working with a university, you're going to want to talk to them. So There's definitely different actors. The hardware and the tech is more centralized than it was when things were starting back in 2017. There's more competition because there's a lot more production happening today than there was at the time, and the distribution pipeline is, especially when it comes to the diversification of location-based um, formats. It's still in its early phases, so that's important to think about, and that includes these different formats bubbling up. There's a lot of public interest, and public interest includes also institutional interests because they can see VR has become a colloquial term. People are excited about it, but don't always have access. And there have been a lot of improvements on the tech side. Before 2020, there was not a really functioning six stuff untethered headset. The first one came out in 2020 during it was the Oculus Quest, and now with the Quest 3, there's pass through, which then engenders a physicality with other people in the same space, and a presence in a space which just full VR can limit. So, and the tech seems to be just only improving. But it's important when you're doing what you're doing to think about why you're making for VR, not just because we can, but what does it serve? If you're going on the publishing side, it's important to note that there's very high standards for publishing from the consumer. They're used to these large budget games in VR, Beat Saber and I expect you to die. These which is an intense title, but it's a very fun game, and it's very high production quality and very high budgets. And so, because a lot of the people that are on Steam and even Oculus are coming from gaming, there's an expectation of a responsiveness from the developer because that's how the industry of video games works, where there's much bigger budgets. So it's really important to have those expectations clear for yourself and your team when you're getting into things that are publishing. Another important question to think about is platform and formats. So we talked about this before. Which headset, which format makes sense? How can you make sure you're prepared for the minimum requirements of each platform? And then at the root of everything, this is the foundational diamond, I guess. Who is the audience? And when do you want to connect with them? What does user testing mean, and how can you conduct this effectively? User testing is something that is very common in video games, but not common in cinema. In VR, it's very useful because there's so much more embodiment and agency from the user. If you've ever been in a VR experience at a festival, sometimes you have really beautiful pieces, but maybe they forgot to put a blocker on a virtual wall, and you fall through through the wall off a platform and just fall and fall and fall. That's happened to me before. Or things that when you're really close to a project and you're producing it and you're deep into it, you might not see that, oh, that causes motion sickness. How can I mitigate that? Oh, that's really frustrating for a user, but I didn't mean it to be frustrating. It's not intentionally supposed to be that way. So the only way to figure that out is to devise early on and in your budget and in your planning user testing time, because that will help with distribution, because then you're kind of problem solving before the problem arrives. And that means that when it's going in either on the platform, published on the platform, or going into a space, you've already solved a lot of the issues that come up. One of the big places where I say notes on festivals, where projects in the sphere that in the XR industry tend to get their first touch with a chance for user testing, kind of sometimes, but more first close interaction with the public, are at festivals. So this is where historically since 2016 really, 2015, 2016, that there's been some of these major film festivals that have invited and have made space for VR to exist. So these there's certain world premiere festivals that you would say, and this kind of follows more the cinema industry side of things, where the goal is to have visibility, market recognition, or XR industry connection, and the idea is that you're setting it off on a path that can launch it to be connected, and also by going there and connecting with the XR industry, broadening your own horizons. So some of these, the top ones would be Sundance, Tribeca, Venice, and South by Southwest. There are so many festivals around the world. These festivals in cinema are highly recognized. And so there can be an added buzz or interest, and they also the curators of these festivals are and all really festivals that are pushing for VR are really invested in the medium and can be uh, um, yeah, helpful. I'm thinking also sharing with you festivals as production and distribution allies, because there can be certain residencies, cohorts, forums, labs that exist thanks to these events, and they can also be avenues for experimentation spaces for XR exhibitions. So EDFA, CPH Docs. I'm mostly pointing to festivals that are, yeah, coming from more cinema side or documentary, but have in the past years really had people that ran with this medium and are making things happen for creators. There's also public event festivals, which can be there's a lot of different ones. I just showed two here, but this is really a connection to local audiences. There's normally an opportunity to license here, and to have more I guess visibility for the project on the beginning. The issue in our industry has been, especially with COVID, that there's been a lot of festivals, and then a festival can become kind of an endpoint, which in cinema and other spaces and in general, a festival is supposed to be a launching point. So that's why it is also important to think about the different XR events and networks, and to branch outside of just XR. So if you're doing something that's more SIG stuff, looking into the gaming side, looking into emerging technology and digital arts, and we talked about residency and labs. But I think that, as we saw from the examples above, when we're thinking about format and function, if you're doing XR in less in publishing, more in for LBE, aligning with partners that are, whether it's a university or a venue, can be a leg up and an important distinction from the past. And all of these next 3 points that I'll make are more questions that it's to help you in the process of distribution. So things to think about: how does the setup work? How is the onboarding and offboarding? How many people can experience the installation or VR at the same time? How many people per hour? These are all questions that you'll need to confront or answer if you're thinking about something that is supposed to go in a museum or in a space, unless it's really more a film. But even then, you still want to think about these questions. Another important question: what type of venue that is interested in the VR piece that you're creating, thematically, or just venues that are already doing VR? Why would a venue want to showcase And so when you can put yourself in the mindset of a different institution, that can help you, because okay, you're making it for here. What are the steps? What are the wraparound materials? And then how can you reach these venues? This is something that is if it really depends. A lot of different studios are doing um, either again partnering early, and it's more of a commission, whereby you have to have at least a slate of works that have already kind of show that you can do this type of production. Or if it's with a university and there's a lot more room for experimentation, and then can be showcased in settings that we talked about before, a festival that has the capacity to showcase your work without too many complications. And then if something is these larger scale immersive experiences with mixed reality, you want to think about and be prepared to answer questions about those economic models. So, how much does it cost to set up, ship, run? What do you need for visitors to feel comfortable? And how do you make promotional choices in the build? So, what are you doing in the experience that you're thinking about how it it can be visible? Are you taking footage? I'm gonna talk about this in a second, actually, with just some general tips, general summary as we get to the end of this presentation that I hope will be helpful for you. So marketing. You want to, if you're publishing and you're self-publishing, or if you're publishing, I would recommend trying to first go to a festival and then reach out to different publishers. But even still, in what you're making, you want to be doing a targeted research approach with a specific dedicated budget. If in your production you're able to access and save some budget that's really for marketing, that will be great to help you along the line. Working with respected voices in online communities, that would be influencers, having the voice of the artist or the idea prioritized. I mentioned before that video games, in the video game industry, there's a closeness with developers that they can feel responsive, and it depends whether it's an indie project or something that is from a large game studio. But the closer that you can get to the heart of the work being communicated out, the better. And then any ways that you can track what you're doing can be helpful. So having a landing page with a pixel programmed, and or even just Google Analytics, you can see, oh wow, okay, most of the people that come onto this are from Germany, so maybe I should localize my website in German if I can. It depends. Obviously, all of this is done with consent and an end user license agreement, which says, okay, we are seeing this information, but it's generally pretty standard today. The next thing you want to think about is anything awards or visibility. You want to take these behind the scenes footage. So if you're making something and it has all these different people involved and it's interesting, trying to capture different moments that could be enrich the people outside after the experience is complete is really good. And you can't really do that. You can't go back in time and get those things. So when I'm talking on this other slide about how do you make promotional choices, sometimes it is just planning early to do interviews with the teams behind it, and see what's inspiring them, because then maybe it will help other people get inspired, and then help your project get out there more and be distributed. And then you want to make sure that things are the award side, just to realize that they awards like the VR awards, or there's the Peabody Awards, Emmy Awards. Webby Awards, Lovey Awards. I'm sure there's a bunch of science and media awards out there that exist. So you want to research and always keep in mind that those types of accolades are more important to the industry than a consumer. So if you're focused, if your business model and the way you're going to do this is very B2B, that could be an important strategy where you would want to have some budget put into this to be able to have resources to research, okay, what awards make sense, what's my strategy, and how am I capturing footage so that I can communicate the heart of this work to people who uh, you know might find it interesting and help it get out there more. Next, porting. So we talked about this a lot, but it's really important. The formats, if you're doing something that is a sick stuff experience, it is at least considered somewhat best practice in the industry to also have a 360 export planned in the production budget if you can. It's good to know that porting from an executable, from an APK to an executable is easier versus if you make something that's an executable file, which is the sick stuff connected to a computer. It's harder to bring that to something that has the same processing power as a phone versus if you have something that is like a phone or mobile based, it's easier to bring it to something that is a bit higher fidelity and heavier. So and because we talked about this, the APK, that is the file that goes with the Oculus Quest. It goes with other headsets as well. Pico and Vive has headsets that are standalone as well that are really excellent. But the thing is, Oculus currently makes up 75% of the market. We'll see how that shifts. I'm not sure, but just in general, having an APK is more simple. If you're doing something that's an executable, you're doing it because you have a partner already on board that is using that format, and or there's just no other option. But that's something to think about. Sometimes new hardware can fund porting for headsets. Not always, but sometimes. But it generally is going to be content that has been recognized in and out of the industry. And then when it comes to those different partnerships with headsets, it's good to look at those exclusivity periods. How long are you exclusive with a partner? And that can even be for if you're working with a distribution team, or if you're working with a university, or maybe you're working with a museum and they say, we just want to show this exclusively in this region for this amount of time. Always think about that. It's just a general tip, because sometimes there can be wiggle room. And if you have a larger strategy of where it's going to go and how it's going to go from the beginning, or you try to, and it's adaptable and modular, then you might sometimes need to negotiate that. And then localization. Localization is super important. This is translation. You might not always have budget to do this from the get-go, but it works, especially VR. Subtitling can be okay. Sick stuff subtitling isn't as great. 360 is fine, but voiceover is really the best. A good voiceover can be more expensive, but what you can do is you can always keep in mind that the original languages are going to be the basis for localization. So you want to keep that system really organized, and in the production, think about how it would be easy for a distributor or a platform or a headset manufacturer to localize with you. And in general, in distribution, especially if 360 works, you're going to need to have your SRT and TBE files accessible, ready to go. And then currently the top languages outside of English are Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, French, German, and Spanish. So those are matching the market at this time. So we started with VR being impactful, ending with a capture from Thanasi who took the images of the Games for Change impact activation at the Museum of Moving Images in New York, because this work, which is, I didn't even say what it's about, but it's about nuclear threat and awareness, and it's a documentary piece, and it was a collaboration with museums, with the Princeton University, and has been in a lot of different places, a lot of which is thanks to the impact production of Games for Change. And this, yeah, the thing is, there's a lot of complications. It's not straightforward with what we do in VR, but the impact can be really meaningful, and can somehow make it worth it, especially when it comes to science and education. So these are the resources that I referenced throughout this presentation. I suggest diving into them further. And if you ever want to reach out, this is my contact, and that will be available as well. And then thank you.